150 million years ago, in the Permian period of the Paleozoic Age, the part of the Earth that would become West Texas was covered by an inland sea. As the continent was uplifted, the climate became arid and the sea slowly dried up, leaving a basin of vast deposits of salt and sediment. Over time, the sediments were transformed into oil and ultimately wealth. The climate remained dry and the salt stayed on as salt. The region became a vast prairie of grass, home to herds of bison and bands of nomadic Indians who roamed between the few sweet springs that dotted the countryside. In the middle of it all was a river, sometimes a trickle, sometimes a torrent. It became known as the Colorado. As the white man came to West Texas, access to the good water became precious. Water was needed for cattle, to make steam in the locomotives, and to support the growing population pouring in to farm and ranch the region. Everything was growing, except the supply of good water. In fact, water was diminishing as more and more wells reached deeper into the aquifer to provide for the thirst above. By the 1940s, West Texas cities that had just begun to flourish from an oil boom were beginning to face extinction as sources of potable water became less and less able to support current need, let alone growth. And so, a little over 50 years ago, a group of men in West Texas decided to do something about water in the dry, thirsty land. It wouldn't be cheap, nor would it be easy. No one felt the need for water more than Julian B. J.B. Thomas, the Chief Executive Officer of Texas Electric Service Company. Without water, there would be no market for the power his company generated. In December of 1945, Thomas asked an old friend in Austin, Colonel E.V. Gene Spence, a member of the State Board of Water Engineers, about finding water for West Texas. Spence responded that the most likely site for a dam on the Colorado River, north of Colorado City, would require a 700-foot lift to get the water westward, where it was needed. Thomas knew that this sort of expense was more than any single city could bear. He rounded up hand-picked representatives from the leadership of the cities of Snyder, Odessa, Big Spring, Midland, and Colorado City to hear a well-researched water development analysis prepared by Simon Fries, a principal in a well-respected Fort Worth engineering firm. The $11 million cost of a dam and regional pipelines was staggering to the leaders from cities that had never passed a single $1 million bond issue. But Big Spring Mayor George W. Dabney put it in perspective. "Gentlemen," he asked, "just what is a drink of water worth in hell?" The next day, June 21, 1946, the Big Spring Herald reported in large headlines that the 5 cities had voted to form the Colorado River Municipal Water Association. By October 14, 1946, a contingent from the CRMWA appeared before the State Board of Water Engineers meeting in Austin, seeking the water appropriation outlined in its plan. The appropriation was granted without objection or delay. But a month later, the city of Snyder pulled out of the association in favor of drilling wells, a less expensive alternative. Planning for the project went on with the remaining members. On October 14, 1948, Fries appeared before the association with a revised proposal. Move the lake site 16 miles to the north, upstream of potentially serious salt deposits. To recover most of the lost drainage area, he recommended damming Bull Creek above the salt and cutting an 8,500-foot-long channel through a hill and down a draw into the new reservoir. This solution would produce adequate supplies of excellent quality water. In the meantime, Texas Electric Service Company announced plans to dam Morgan Creek just below Colorado City. The expectation was that this lake would provide water for Tesco's generators, as well as municipal water and a nearby recreational area for Colorado City. Presented with that option, Colorado City withdrew from the association. Although the group was now down to 3 active members, the CRMWA pressed on toward creating a water district that could impound, transport, and sell water. Everything still seemed to be on track. Then came a major shock. The Midland City Council voted to pull out of the project, declaring that it had new wells that gave the city a sound water outlook. Despite this major setback, the 2 remaining partners, Big Spring and Odessa, vowed to continue the fight, and over their doubts, moved to draft the bills necessary to transform the association into a legal public body, a water district. On May 28, 1949, the bill to create the Colorado River Municipal Water District passed the Texas Senate 30-0 and was immediately adopted concurrently by the House. Governor Buford Jester signed it into law on June 8, 1949, but it required voter ratification in the cities to gain the full legal status spelled out in the legislation. A month later, the communities of Big Spring and Odessa turned out to approve the creation of the Colorado River Municipal Water District. The vote: Big Spring 522 to 31, and Odessa 365 to 16 in favor of the proposition. The same group of association members were appointed by the cities to serve as directors, and the first board meeting of the CRMWD took place August 15, 1949, at the Settles Hotel, where J.B. Thomas had first marshaled forces more than 3 years before. Contracts were worked out between the CRMWD and its member cities, and once more voters would have to ratify the massive expenditures. With water already in short supply, perhaps no other issue of similar magnitude has ever received such majorities. Big Spring voters approved 941 to 1, and in Odessa the vote was 1,044 to 1. But the dam and pipelines were still a couple of years away, and the need for water was now. In November of 1950, the CRMWD board authorized its land committee to secure well supplies. Studies showed that wells in Martin County could produce more than 10 million gallons per day from the Ogallala aquifer. This solution promised enough water to bridge the gap. The busy year wasn't over yet. The city of Snyder, overwhelmed by the Canyon Reef oil boom, presented a petition of more than 300 names, many civic leaders among them, requesting the CRMWD to annex them. They wanted back in. To cap off the year, in late December, the district asked E.V. Spence to serve as its first general manager. He began work on January 1, 1951. On January 27th, Snyder voted to rejoin the district by a margin of 432 to 25, and also approved building a $600,000 water treatment plant to handle water from the new lake. On a hot Sunday afternoon, April 29, 1951, several thousand people from communities in the CRMWD service area gathered at the new dam site on the Scurry-Borden County line to celebrate the beginning of construction. However, in a region already short of water to meet growth, the drought of the 1950s was already establishing itself, and immediate steps had to be taken to produce water from some source until the lake became a reality. That source was to be a field of 13 wells pumping at least 7 million gallons a day from the aquifer in central Martin County. Pipelines were pushed east and west to Odessa and Big Spring as local reserves reached dry bottom in the summer of 1952. Citizens in both cities celebrated as CRMWD water gushed, first to Odessa and then to Big Spring, relieving water rationing in both cities. The new dam was completed in September of 1952, and the reservoir it impounded was named for J.B. Thomas, the man whose vision and drive had organized the development of water resources in West Texas. Although the lake had caught some water, drought still held the level far below the Snyder intake, and the city was parched. District employees devised an ingenious plan, constructing a cofferdam around the intake to hold water, which was pumped from the lake's first catch of water, using a farmall tractor. In July of 1953, Lake Thomas water bubbled noisily into the new water treatment plant in Snyder. The next year, Thomas water reached Big Spring and Odessa. In spite of low annual rainfall and recurrent drought over the semi-arid region, never again in that century would CRMWD member cities face water rationing. By 1956, manager E.V. Spence had called on the district's engineering firm, Fries and Nichols, to make recommendations for a new source of water for the growing region. The site ultimately recommended was near the town of Robert Lee. A permit request was filed with the Texas Water Commission, with expectations that there would be only token resistance to the new project, since the demonstrated need was so obvious. However, it was mid-December of 1964, and the Highland Lakes of the Lower Colorado River Authority were at an historic low. What had been envisioned as an appearance of only several days now stretched into weeks as the CRMWD delegation, led by manager E.V. Spence, parried the thrusts of the LCRA. Finally, with the intervention of Governor John Connally, permit number 2179 was issued. On September 1, 1965, the way was clear to construct the new facility. Colonel E.V. Gene Spence, the grand old gentleman whose knowledge and experience had helped guide the CRMWD into existence and through its earliest challenges, was not to see the granting of the permit. Exhausted by the rigor of the hearings in Austin, he became ill and died in April of 1965. Today, the lake he fought to create bears his name, the E.V. Spence Reservoir. The board selected Colonel Spence's assistant manager, Owen H. Ivey, to take over management of the growing district operations. Ivey had come to the district from Fries and Nichols, where he had worked on the Lake Thomas system. This background, along with Spence's mentoring, made Ivey the ideal choice to lead the district through its next phase of development. It would take 4 years until the spring of 1969 to complete the 4-mile earthen dam across the Colorado River above Robert Lee. Although the potential impoundment of the lake is 488,000 acre-feet, the big reservoir has never once reached the top of the spillway, due to evaporation, frequent withdrawals, plus releases to improve water quality. However, as the Spence Reservoir neared completion, the drought of the early 70s was already firmly entrenched. This required the rapid development of a well field in Ward County and a pipeline back to Odessa to supplement waning supplies. Miraculously, the well field and pipeline were brought online in just over 5 months. Even with the newly completed Spence Reservoir, CRMWD directors saw that the need for a third reservoir on the upper Colorado was a practical necessity to ensure a stable supply for the region into the 21st century. Studies began in 1975, and in mid-October 1977, the CRMWD board voted to submit an application for a permit to impound a reservoir near the Stacy, Texas post office, 25 miles southeast of Ballinger. Board Vice President John Taylor and James Rosser, the district's attorney, along with Ivey, immediately flew to Austin to make the filing. It was the first step in an 8-year-long battle between CRMWD and LCRA, the bitterest water permit fight to date in Texas history. It ended only after Governor Mark White let both parties know that he wanted the matter settled. Finally, in mid-May of 1985, the permit to build Stacy passed its final hurdle. The construction process itself still had some major bumps in the road. Aside from the challenge of land acquisition, archaeologists now began to line up to conduct studies, as did wildlife conservationists who sought to preserve the habitat of the tiny Concho River water snake. It took more than a year and considerable expense for the district before the U.S. Corps of Engineers would issue a 404 permit for construction to begin. groundbreaking ceremonies for the new dam took place on May 16, 1987, in the Ballinger High School Gymnasium, due, ironically enough, to torrential rains in the area. The construction contractor, Brown & Root USA, began work immediately, using 31 cubic yard scrapers to move over 500,000 cubic yards of material before the end of the year. The concrete was poured for the $67 million project with its 6 massive Tainer gates. The district, along with the cities of Midland, San Angelo, and Abilene, whose partnership had made the project possible, could sense that the payoff was near. By December 7, 1989, with the project substantially complete, the CRMWD Board of Directors voted to name the new reservoir in honor of Owen H. Ivey for his strong and tenacious leadership during turbulent times for the district. The dam itself was named for Simon W. Fries, the friend and counselor whose peerless engineering skills had guided the CRMWD since before its inception. Dedication ceremonies, complete with speeches, protests, and barbecue, were held on the new site on February 6, 1990. The gates were closed in time to impound a substantial inflow from heavy rains, and by the spring of 1992, the new Ivey Reservoir reached the spillway. West Texas now had good water to last into the next century. But there was one more challenge remaining, and it was a big one: getting the water from Ivey to where it needed to be, the cities of San Angelo, Midland, and Odessa. General Manager Ivey insisted that the required pipeline should be built immediately, and the board embraced his perception. This meant constructing a 4 to 5 foot diameter pipeline along a path that stretched 157 miles to the west, rising 1,400 feet in elevation above the Ivey intake. The task went to John D. Stevens, a contractor from Stone Mountain, Georgia, who took on the job like a battlefield commander. He supervised an operation that dug the ditch, delivered and installed thousands of sections of steel cylinder concrete pipe, covered the hole, and returned the topsoil. The spectacular project was completed in 25 months, and through its 7 new computerized pump stations can provide an ultimate capacity of 90 million gallons per day to San Angelo, and from there 65 million gallons per day on to the Midland-Odessa storage reservoir. Built into the system is a tap for a projected pipeline to Big Spring, which could draw up to 10 million gallons per day. At the dedication of the new pipeline, General Manager Owen Ivey reminded the crowd of the vision and tenacity of the remarkable individuals who served on the board of directors, whose work over the past half-century had brought a stable supply of good water to arid West Texas, without ever having spent a nickel of tax money or federal funds. With the reservoir that bore his name completed, the massive pipeline project operational, and the district's water needs at least for the moment secure, Ivey retired, turning over district management to his successor, current General Manager John Grant. Over its 50 years of operation, CRMWD has envisioned and brought into existence 4 benchmark projects: the 3 major reservoirs, Thomas, Spence, and Ivey, and the pipelines that carry water virtually from one end of the district to the other. Since before creation of the first lake, the district has been continually developing what is today one of the best operating water systems in the world. This is the elaborate 450-mile system of pipelines and pump stations that enable almost complete flexibility in the positioning of potable water resources among the district's various reservoirs. The system lifts water almost 1,400 feet from its low point at the Ivey Reservoir to the storage reservoir at Odessa. An elaborate array of sensors, valves, and controls furnishes constant status monitoring and instant response to problems, all under the computerized control of a single operator located at the state-of-the-art John Taylor Central Control Station adjacent to district headquarters in Big Spring. It provides an invaluable tool to carry out the district's delivery obligations. To upgrade and protect water quality, the district developed a $25 million system of side storage and evaporation reservoirs, perhaps as important to the regional water supply as the big lakes themselves. These storage reservoirs hold water high in salt content that is pumped from the river channel during times of low flow. Over the years, the system has diverted what will soon amount to 1 million tons of salt from reaching the main lakes. The John Taylor Central Control Station is also the monitoring and control center for an additional 150-mile pipeline system that connects these on-line storage reservoirs and moves the non-potable water to where it can best evaporate or be sold to oil companies for secondary recovery operations. Overall, the district's total system, including reservoirs, well fields, and pipelines, purchased over the years for about $300 million, is worth almost $733 million in today's valuation. For almost half its existence, the district has maintained a systematic program of weather modification. Large cloud formations entering the CRMWD watersheds are monitored and evaluated at the district's radar station. Staff pilots then use district aircraft to seed promising rain clouds to stimulate the formation of precipitation over the area. More than 25 years of experience have documented an increase in precipitation of over 20% in the target area in comparison with surrounding unmodified areas. The district has always provided access to the lakes and various recreational facilities for area citizens. Reasonable fees are charged for usage, but the district always picks up the shortfall to ensure that the facilities are well maintained. Considering the eons it took for an ocean to dry up and the continents to drift apart, a half-century isn't much time at all. But that's all the time that West Texans had to corral the water that would give them a future in the land that was their home. In that time, a few hundred dedicated people working under the leadership of truly remarkable directors and officers have forced a sometimes river to produce water enough to sustain this region into the coming century. They have done it through ingenuity, persistence, politics, and an abundance of just plain horse sense. And they did it all themselves. In a region where water, hope, and cooperation were once in scarce supply, the board of today's Colorado River Municipal Water District manages the resources of a strong, self-funded organization that serves the continuing water needs of West Texas. The issues of water supply and water quality will always be central to the quality of life in West Texas. The first 50 years of the Colorado River Municipal Water District have seen the development of an efficient and versatile water management system as good as any on the planet. It is a tool for the people of this region to use as they meet the demands and realize the hopes of the 21st century.